Hey Mark, what can you tell me about extract method?
Extract method is useful when I have a big method such as this one and I want to break it into smaller pieces, smaller methods.
Okay,
Um, One of the reasons is for readability, right? I can make the method a little more readable. In fact, one of the big clues is that you have a method that needs to be broken down into pieces is you might have comments in front of sections of code with some white space and things like that.
sure.
So I might want to make the code more readable. That gives me a lot of benefits, especially if I'm bringing new people up on to speed with the code. There's less code that they have to read, and it's faster to read the code. Um, there are other benefits as well. For example, code reuse. For example, here I've got this comment that says add the row. I might want to add more code that adds more rows here, but I don't want to just keep copying and pasting this. Instead, I want to select that block of code, hit the CodeRush key, choose extract method. There you can see in the preview hint that it's going to call the method add row. It's going to pass in table, ID, and name. You can see the arrows being drawn here for table, ID, and name coming in. You can see where they're coming in and referenced in the code above. Here, let me just select this again, scroll up a bit. There you can see everything coming in. And then I just hit enter, select where I want to put it, and then hit enter again. And there it's got my method. It's got the method name selected, so in case I want to change the name of that. In this case, it got the method name from the comment above that said add the row. So it saw that comment and said, well, let's call it add row.
Good stuff, yeah.
So not bad. I'm going to undo this a second and just go back because I want to show you a little bit more about this because this is pretty in-depth refactoring that you have available to you. If I select just this instead, right now what's happening, I'm creating a new row and assigning some properties to it. I hit the CodeRush key. In this case, it wants to call the method getRow because it sees that I'm creating and getting it is what I'm doing. It's no longer calling it addRow, right?
Yep.
Different name. Also, I see this green arrow right here. So if I see that green arrow, that essentially means good. Also in the preview hint, you can see showing up here that I've got one return value. So if I got one return value, it's going to create a function that returns that value, which is the most readable way of doing it, right? You could do an out parameter instead or a ref parameter, but we don't have to do that. So I can just hit enter again, select where I want to put it. There's my getRow method. Pretty easy.
Yep.
Let's undo it again. I want to now move up a little higher. I've got some code up here. I'm just going to select all of this code. And I want to admit that for a moment that this code is like totally contrived, but it's contrived because I want to show you just what happens when you have out parameters. So here's an example where I'm modifying two different parameters inside a block of a code, work string and ID. If I hold down the control key, you can see what's happening. Work strings you referenced down here. ID is referenced down there. ID string comes into this, right? So I have one input, two output parameters. Right there I can see what the call looks like. Output parameters are in red. And also you can see them labeled right down here, output parameters too. If you see that, you probably do not want to extract that particular block. I mean, you can, but in general, out parameters are harder to work with. You have to type in out. It requires more reading, more documentation, and you're really, it's kind of like the opposite of what object-oriented programming is about, and what good programming is about. Generally, a method should do one thing. So in the case where I'm setting two different variables and they're distinct different objects that I'm passing in, that's like a method that's doing two different things. And so it's not as good. And then I also wanted to show you if I omit these initializations for those two output parameters and put them here, what happens is we now get a method that has reference parameters going into it.
Gotcha, yeah.
And that's what it looks like there. We no longer have that ID string needed because it's already assigned to work string here. And now we just have two refs. And the refs are showing up in purple. And again, you can see them right here with the reference value, how many count, what the parameters are. So if you want to get a sense of how complex things are, you can just select it, hit the CodeRush key, and you'll see this kind of the flow diagram that's kind of drawn on there. And you really want to look for that. You're looking for something that looks like this, or something that looks like this. This is not bad. Having that green arrow out means you're going to get a nice function. And you're also looking to see if you have a lot of complexity or red or purple ones, reference or output parameters, because those are going to be generally harder to deal with. So it kind of gives you a visual warning here.
Sure, yeah. I mean, all CodeRush previews for refactorings and similar tasks are useful, but this one I feel is particularly useful. It allows you to see almost the metrics for a small subset of code prior to doing the extraction. Is this exactly the code I wanted to have selected? Should I have selected a little bit more, a little bit less, and experimentally work out, okay, yeah, I want 2 to 3, maybe as many as 5 browsers in, 1 out. That's my kind of sweet spot. And until you get there, you just make small adjustments. CodeRush will show you exactly what you're going to get ahead of time, so there's no worry about it, and you can get to exactly where you want in a very short space of time.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's great for really large methods, blocks of code, and it can really be helpful at that time, like you're in a giant method and you think you know what's happening with the code.
Yeah.
And you're about ready to do an extract method, and then all of a sudden you're surprised because you realize, oh no, whoever wrote this method has created something that's really very entangled with local variables, right? Local variables are used and referenced all over the place. And what you thought was going to be clean is not. And it gives you an alert of that before you commit. And then all of a sudden you're surprised by, the generated code with all of these output parameters, that sort of thing. And you're like, what's going on? So yeah, it's very helpful, very useful, especially as the code gets nastier and more entangled.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great for use on legacy code bases, or again, code bases where you're going to have to you take this complexity and trying to explain it to somebody else and make it more simple. It's just fantastic for almost any situation.